The ethical questions of a media role in the October 7th attacks, a question of complicity. A media watchdog group that monitors for anti-Israeli bias in news coverage released its findings that 4 freelance photographers that work with the AP, Reuters, CNN, and the New York Times were present in both Gaza and Israel during the October 7th attacks on Israel. The photographers were accused of being, quote, embedded with the Hamas fighters who carried out the attack. And in one example, one of the photographers is posing for a selfie with one of the terrorist leaders. This report brings up ethical questions about the level of complicity the mainstream media outlets play in this attack. Defense that is being promoted by the photographers and the news agencies was they were simply at the right place when they noticed gatherings of Hamas fighters, terrorists, at the Gaza-Israeli border, and the unfolding event took them from there. This is a pretty flimsy excuse because if Hamas did not want them there, they would have been blocked their access or worse. But the photographers were allowed to ride with Hamas as they entered Israel and were unimpeded. They were able to capture the moments of the crossing into Israel and committing their atrocities. It is quite apparent that they were also, at the very least, tipped off by Hamas, but were most likely given knowledge of the upcoming attack. Hamas has conducted a very effective worldwide publicity campaign, so it's not to stretch to see that they, Hamas, saw usefulness of having photographers come along during the attack. The question is less about law and more about ethics, though clear that these photographers broke Israeli law and possibly U.S. law. The question to be answered is, did the photographers know they were going to be in an attack? Did they know who the targets would be? Did the AP, Reuters, CNN, and New York Times know about the attack? If they did know and did not report it to authorities, then what complicity did they have in the attack? The photographers are on very weak ground on the complicity argument, but the news organizations are on slightly better ground since the photographers were freelancers and not direct employees. Once the attack was underway, it was clear that innocent people were being targeted, and if they were not complicit, wouldn't they have stopped documenting attacks as the atrocities unfolded? Instead, they continued to photograph and accept transportation from Hamas. Were they put under duress to continue to photograph? Typically, if this is the case, one would not be taking selfies with one of the Hamas leaders after the attack. When a reporter or photographer goes to an event where there might be a crime, such as a demonstration, and they photograph a crime, it is different than being told beforehand of what is going to happen and that crimes need to be documented. A reporter or photographer cannot be asked to attend a murder by the murderers who gives them a ride to and from the crime. Ethics would say that the reporter and the photographer would need to report the crime as it is being planned and as they know it. Though ethics are in short supply in the media who are in a race for headlines and clicks, and this fact incentivized Hamas to add photographers associated with large media companies to get the maximum impact of their atrocities. The U.S. typically embed reporters and photographers in units conducting a military operation. How is this practice different than what Hamas did? The obvious difference is the U.S. is a nation state and its military must conduct itself based on the laws of war. The embedding of reporters is intended to provide a watchdog that demonstrates that the U.S. military does not conduct atrocities outside the bounds of war, or that the nation-state warfare or the rules of engagement. Hamas is not a nation-state and is seen as much of the world as a criminal terrorist organization, so it has a different standing within a nation would have both legally and within the bounds of the UN. In the eyes of much of the world, Hamas is just an example of organized crime. The evidence seems clear that these photographers had knowledge and were complicit in the attacks on civilians and chose to provide no warnings and were in a cooperative relationship with Hamas. The question becomes of Israel is how should the photographers be treated? Israel has sworn that they would hunt down every terrorist who conducted the attack on October 7th. Will these photographers be included in this act of Israeli revenge? When a getaway driver is in a car during a bank heist and the person is murdered in the bank by one of the perpetrators, the getaway driver sitting in the car is just as guilty of murder as one pulling the trigger. Western law seems to indicate that these photographers are complicit and guilty. Does that mean that they should be subject to Israeli vengeance? Extrajudicial killings are illegal too, so that is just another argument to be had.